The collapse of the Champlain Tower in Surfside, Florida in 2021 resulted in the loss of priceless lives and the waste of private property valued in the millions.
It's horrible not just for what happened, but because it was preventable.
The Champlain Tower had several engineering reports in recent years, several of which detected critical structural problems. It is not clear yet how severe were the engineer warnings. Also, it is not clear what the role of the inspectors at the building department in Surfside should have been.
We need to do a better job of inspections. This building was going through the recertification after 40 years. 40 years to inspect structurally assessment. You don't wait 40 years to go to a doctor to see what's wrong.
If buildings inspection should not be deferred for too long, then adequate funding of buildings reserves should not be deferred either. A reserve account, or savings account, allows a homeowners association to carry out timely maintenance and replacements without deferring repairs, which preserves the structural and technical integrity of the building. Subsequently, it protects its residents' lives and quality of living. This is where reserve studies play a key role, because they evaluate the different structural and technical elements in a building to determine their lifespan and cost of replacement. Such evaluation guides board members' decision on the annual amount of money needed for daily operations as well as the amounts required for savings. These reserves or savings accounts protect owners from being exposed to special assessment. All this urges us to inquire about the findings of the 2018 reserve study prepared for the Champlain Tower South in Florida.
The 99-page report underscores the building's anemic financial reserves combined with the need for structural repairs.
Building that collects so much maintenance fees every single year over 40 years, how does that even happen?
The condo association, when they realized they had this massive shortage, struggled to even obtain loans.
2 lenders actually denied them, citing that they were too high risk, in part because of the low funds in the reserves.
Right until the eve of the catastrophe, the owners at Champlain had to choose between continuing to live in a place that was cosmetically nice on the surface, therefore agree to pay stellar special assessments, or acknowledge the underlying structural disaster in the building and sell their property and run for their lives. Legal experts view special assessments as a plague because they usually exceed 20% of the unit's value and sometimes their amount is even identical to the total unit's value. This urged many states to pass laws to prevent homeowners' exposure to these devastating special assessments by mandating reserve funds. Some of these laws, however, include ambiguous language that could be used by some to abort the initial purpose for which the reserve fund laws were passed in the first place. Now, who is to blame for the underfunded reserves at the collapsed tower in Florida? Some would think that the homeowners themselves might have voted against fully funding the reserves. However, the voting process itself allows for proxies and many owners like to enjoy the carefree aspect of communities associations. Therefore they do not even show up for annual meetings to vote. This means that the proxies often end up in the hands of the board, whose members are the ones ultimately deciding whether to use them to fund reserves. The ultimate decision-making power lies with the board, which has a fiduciary duty that requires its members to act with the utmost care and in the best interest of all owners. But what if they don't?
If you're concerned about something, go to the board, and you hope they're receptive.
And if they're not, you can go to court for a breach of contract claim.
This is correct, at least in theory. According to the law, any owner can bring legal action against the association board if there is a breach of contract. However, lawsuits filed for homeowners associations' breach of contract often face insurmountable challenges. In one recent case, an association board commissioned a reserve study in 2013. The study found that the association had no reserve fund. Therefore, it suggested several plans to build reserves over the next 20 years. Although the association's own bylaws required it to build a reserve fund, and the reserve study commissioned by the board insisted on the need for one, the board members moved on without establishing a reserve account. Results of the board's choice started surfacing only 2 years later. Leaks in the garage, explosions of HVAC pipes, and failures of the elevators warranting a city's inspection and warning of bringing criminal charges against the board. Even when an appellate court concluded that the association's own bylaws required a reserve fund, the owners who had sued the board for breach of contract faced a lower court's refusal to abide by the appellate's court decision and continued witnessing the structural and financial deterioration of the building to the point a second reserve study in 2019 found that the building needed $16 million in repairs, very close to the $15 million that were needed for the collapsed tower in Florida. The story of the homeowners in both buildings is similar: unsatisfactory inspections, low reserve funds, deferred maintenance, stellar special assessments, all resulted in uphill battle lawsuits, embezzlement, or collapse, in Ohio, Nevada, Florida, among others. If the duty of building inspections falls upon the local government, the duty to build a robust reserve fund lies with the board, who has a fiduciary duty, even though they are volunteers. If legislators are looking to empower HOA boards to levy special assessments with or without owners' consent, is it not time for legislators to eliminate the law's ambiguous language regarding reserve funds, and require board members to build those funds with or without owners' consent?